Okay, hi, this is Tracy Powell again with the NABJ Digital Journalism Task Force. And we have with us today three of my other favorite people. You just met two of my other favorite people in the previous session. These are the next three, I think. Um, we have Tammy Kim, my friend who works for Al Jazeera, and she freelanced before she started with Al Jazeera. And the next person is Kerry Williams, who is a he was a freelance copy editor and worked himself into a full-time job at CQ Roll Call. And then Rebecca Aguilar, who I actually got to know while I was in Dallas, Texas. And she worked for a TV station. I worked for print. And now she is a freelance journalist and doing everything, I think, online, print, and television. So
Right.
today, right now, in this particular session, we're going to talk about Freelance 101, everything you wanted to know about freelancing, but we were afraid to ask. We're going to talk about money, collections, taxes, um, and how do you figure out you want to be a freelancer from the jump start, actually. So if each of you could just say a few words about yourselves, and then we'll jump right in.
I'll go first. I'm Rebecca Aguilar. I have been a reporter now going on, this June will be 33 years. I've been in television for 27, and in 2008 I went freelance because me and my TV station got a divorce. And it's been the best thing ever. I love being a freelancer. I wasn't afraid to be a freelancer because I always think if you're a reporter right now and you have a full-time job, have a plan B. My plan B has always been being a freelancer. And I love being my own boss. I love covering what I want to cover. I follow my passion. And once I follow my passion, then the money comes behind it. So I love being a reporter, and I'll probably die being a reporter.
Amy.
Hi, everybody. Sorry about the technical difficulties I had before. My name is Tammy Kim, and I'm a staff writer at Al Jazeera America on the print side. Before that, I was freelancing for about 3 years for different outlets. I'm actually a recovering attorney, so that was my first career, and freelancing sort of allowed me to transition into full-time journalism, and I'd love to talk about that. Thank you.
Carrie.
Hi, everybody. My name is Kerry Williams, and as Tracy said, I'm a full-time copy editor now for Congressional Quarterly, or otherwise known as CQ Roll Call. I did spend some time as a freelancer before that. I guess I have a similar story to Rebecca in that I was removed from my job in 2009 and was forced to go the freelance route from then, and managed to make a living from that until I got back into a full-time position. So I look forward to sharing some of my insights with you.
Okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate each one of you joining us today. I've sent out the link, so hopefully we'll have some more people joining us. Well, I guess we could start out by answering this first question. How does a person determine? How did you determine whether freelancing was for you or not?
Who do you want to answer?
We can start with Tammy start with Kerry since we started with him last. He went last.
For me, it wasn't much of a choice. I mean, I'd lost my full-time job. I was a copy editor at the South Florida Sun-Sentinel newspaper in Fort Lauderdale. I was there for 6 years, and then got caught up in a mass layoff. 30 people lost their job, and I was one of them. And that at that point, my choices were find full-time employment again, which was non-existent, and because all the Florida media companies were laying off like crazy, or go the freelance route, and that's what I decided to do. My first foray into freelancing was through a website called demandstudios.com, which had become somewhat of a haven for laid-off copy editors and even some reporters at the time. So once I got accepted there, I was able to scratch out some income, for a few months until I, until I decided to transition into grad school. And then once I was in grad school, I had a couple other opportunities for freelancing as well, copy editing for the university and also for the Bureau of National Affairs in Virginia, or BNA as it's called, which covers Congress. So for me, it's just a matter of need. It's just a matter of also, the opportunities presenting themselves in different ways, and until I could work my way back into full-time employment.
Tammy, how about you? How did you determine whether it was the life you wanted or not?
Sure. Well, when I was practicing law, I had the sense that I'd wanted to move into full-time writing, but of course, one doesn't just get a job right away. And so I think freelancing is really great in terms of people who may have another job already and are trying to make a transition. I think it allowed me to really have a lot of freedom to explore different outlets and to hone the craft and get a bunch of clips together so that I could then start applying for different jobs that would be more steady income. I mean, I think we can talk later about the sort of monetary challenges around that, but I do think for folks who are trying to make transitions or do 2 or 3 different things at once, freelancing is really, really great.
So how did you make the decision? How did you transition from law to writing?
Yeah, so I was a social justice lawyer, and I write a lot about labor and poverty and related topics now. So some of the themes were definitely connected. But I just felt as I was practicing that I wanted to do something that was more creative, spend more time with folks in terms of interviewing, and then also be more creative and do the writing that I love to do so much. So basically, like at nights and on the weekends, anytime I had a free moment, I would just try to network with journalists and figure out, which outlets did have opportunities for new writers and go about it that way. But in the beginning, it wasn't necessarily. I didn't really have a hope of having a full-time career as a journalist. It was something that I wanted to kind of experiment with and see.
Okay, Rebecca, how did you jump from being on staff at a TV station to freelancing in all these the variety of platforms that you now work in?
It was a blessing in disguise. Like I said, me and my TV station got a divorce. That's what I call it. And after that, I always had a plan B. I always knew, the TV business is very much you have a contract today and not a contract tomorrow. Fortunately, I was at this TV station for 14 years, but it was the best thing to happen because it was during that time that online was going to be huge. And I knew that every TV station was going to have its website, every newspaper was going to have online. So right before I went into online freelancing, I went back to school to a community college and learned web design, learned coding, learned everything I could. Because I already had the TV skills, I already had the journalism skills. I just needed to know all the online skills. I already knew how to edit video also online. And so I made that before I made the transition, I prepared myself with more tools because I didn't want anybody to say that, oh, well, you don't know how to web design or you don't know how to code. Oh, yes, I do, and I have a journalism background. And so then it was kind of easy because, and if people out there aren't networking today, I network 24/7. You know that, Tracy. I do speaking engagements. I do everything. And I knew that's the place you find jobs. Because, as they say today, it's not what you know, it's who knows you. If you know a bunch of stuff, you could have a gazillion degrees from Harvard or wherever. But if people don't know who you are, they're not going to call you with a job. So I knew to make that transition because, again, I wanted the freedom to write stories I wanted to write about. No more car wrecks. Don't get me wrong. You got to cover your car wrecks and ambulance chase. Yes. But I wanted to do stories on Latinos. I wanted to do positive stories of people of color. And that's not happening on local TV because you do have to cover the motorcycle chase or, whatever. And so I knew that this was the perfect timing in 2007, 2008. Make the jump and make it hard and have the skills that even the kids coming out of college with web design and all that had. I just had more to offer, and I had to show people because once you're a veteran, I think people think it's easy, but it really isn't because people want young and cheap. And no disrespect to people who are younger than me and maybe cost less than me, but that's what they want. And I understand in the end, you guys, the media is a business, and they want to save a buck. So that's why I jumped in. I knew it was time. Online was going to explode, and it did.
So I wonder if we could talk a little bit about the initial steps that you have to take in order to set up a freelance business. Because this is a business. It's not, a hobby for most people these days, but especially with the economic downturn and turn in the industry. what is the very first thing that you have to do, whether you are a freelance copy editor or a freelance writer or a freelance broadcast journalist? What's the very first thing you have to do?
I can tell you right away. First of all, I let everybody across the board, everybody on Facebook, all my contacts, everybody that had me on speaking engagements, every source, let them know I'm a freelance reporter. And I didn't label myself. I didn't say I was a freelance broadcast reporter. I didn't say I was an online reporter. I just said I'm a reporter, meaning I can do radio, which I have radio background. I can do broadcast, and I can do online. I had never done print. Never. And that was interesting because there were freelance jobs for print out there. I remember the Dallas Business Journal had an opening for a freelancer. And the guy calls me, and I know you guys may find this funny, but he goes, "Do you have any clips?" I was like, "What the hell is that?" Because I'm a broadcaster. And even though I have 48 awards and nominations, okay, he wouldn't even look at me. And then I realized, wow, so I had to figure out how to break into that. So one of the first thing is let everybody know. Everybody. I don't care if it's a nonprofit. I don't care if it's your contacts, every organization you belong to. I belong to NAHJ and NABJ. Let them all know. The second thing, in my opinion, is beef up all your social networking platforms. If you look at my Twitter, I don't waste any lines with my retweets are not endorsements. I tell you I'm VP of this, VP of that, freelance this, video editor of that. Beef it up. Beef up your LinkedIn. Sell yourself. And don't be afraid to toot your horn. Don't think, oh, how arrogant am I? No. These people want to see what goods you have to offer. And this is where they're going to look. They're not going to call you up. They're going to look at your LinkedIn. They're going to look at your profile on your Twitter. Those are my first few tips.
So you got to promote yourself, in other words.
If you don't toot your horn, then someone else is going to toot theirs, and you're going to lose a job. That's how it is in this business. It's competitive. It's a good competition.
Tammy, what about you? What was the first thing that you did to establish yourself, your business?
Yeah, sure. So, Carrie, did you want to go first?
I thought Tracy called me, but you can go ahead.
Okay, I'll just be very quick, but I came in on it as I was explaining, I think on the kind of opposite end of Rebecca, who had already had an established career and then was kind of moving on to do more flexible work. I think for me, everything was so new, and so the first thing was really about establishing contacts, and that was both with publications but also other freelancers. I mean, even though it is very competitive, I think it's also really important to have a network of folks who are doing the same kinds of things you are, so that you can know which publications are, pay this way and work this way, and which editors are good to work with, etc. So that was really important for me. And then I think just having a very organized system of pitching and contacting and following up and sort of, going through all of the steps of the publishing process. And of course, I just work in print, so that's really the only process I know. But that would sort of be my advice, that you kind of have an organized system, and then you have your list of contacts, and you really try to work that network for future opportunities.
Okay. All right. Carrie, you had something to add to that.
Yeah, I was gonna say that the first thing you should do is just make sure you're ready. Have a resume ready. I've been in the print world for a while now, and print/online world, and I can tell you you just have to be ready from the get-go. If you are anticipating that your contract is running out or that you might be without a job soon, make sure you can hit the ground running. That whenever a freelance opportunity arises, that you can have a resume ready to present to somebody, and also clips, which depending on what kind of job you have, you may or may not need clips, because the opportunities they come up quickly, they disappear quickly. So like the other panelists said. So I would say just be ready to seize any opportunity that arises.
You got to jump on it. So
Tracy, can I say something real quick? Because
Sure.
He just said something that was very interesting. One of the things I did, since I had a broadcast background, was I made sure that I had newspaper people that could help me, because I am now, but I was not a print writer. It's very different from broadcasting. We talk present tense. We write that way. We write in conversation. We really don't follow AP style, to be honest with you. I mean, they'll tell you broadcasters. Different from print. They're like, oh, that's not AP style. That's not AP style. And it's like, whoa, what is that? So I have many friends at the Dallas Morning News or the Fort Worth Star Telegram that in my first online pieces, I would have them read it over. And just to help me out, even though I have all this experience, don't be afraid to reach out to your fellow journalists and say, hey, help me out. At the same time, since I do have a broadcast background, and they were being forced to shoot videos, I taught them how to basically shoot a video, how to tell a story in video, because they didn't. So, but with those connections, suddenly, they're telling people, hey, I have a friend who's a freelancer. It's amazing how many print people, I mean, obviously, I've gotten jobs because some print people may work full-time for the Dallas Morning News, and they've been offered a freelance gig, but they can't do it because they work for the Dallas Morning News or the Fort Worth Star Telegram or whatever. So they would pass it along to me. And in a sense, on the side, they were kind of my editors because, again, print journalism is very different from broadcast journalism. So that's another thing I did. I reached out to my colleagues and said, hey, if you know anybody who needs freelance work or you're ever offered a freelance job you can't take, pass it along to me, and they would, and I've been blessed.
So it's all about networking and making sure people know that you're out there and available and ready to go. I'm gonna be honest about something I did when I went freelance full time. I had to get a place with at least 2 bedrooms in my apartment because the bed calls my name, the television is a distraction, and so I had to have a place with an office that was separate from my bedroom, separate from my living room, someplace where I could focus on my work. And I treated it just like a job. I got up at 6 o'clock in the morning, went to the gym, ate breakfast, came back, showered, and I was at my desk at 9 a.m. ready to work. So I wonder if you all had to develop some type of routine when you started out in order to make sure that you were treating this like a business and not just like something on the side. Tammy, you want to go first? And
yeah, sure. First, I totally admire your discipline. I think you probably did it a lot better than most people do.
She did.
Yeah, I definitely had a routine. As I said, I had, I guess, 2 years where I was working a full-time job and then freelancing on the side, and then I had 1 year where I was full-time freelancing only. So, yeah, during those times, I think carving out that space, both physical and mental, is totally important. Like, for instance, when I was working, I had a spot at the library that I would go to before and after work and on the weekends, or, at my house, I would turn off all of the appliances, internet, and just like when I had to write, I don't know if you guys use the program Freedom, which turns off the internet on your computer, but that when you're writing long pieces is really important so you don't get distracted.
I might need that.
I do think, yeah, it's really great. But yeah, I do think having that discipline and definitely, yeah, treating it as a job, and that has to do also with just being organized and being able to tell your friends if they want to see you or, there are other appointments vying for your time to say, no, I'm actually at work, even if it doesn't really look like work to other people. That was extremely important. So I guess I would just reiterate what you were saying.
Okay. Carrie or Rebecca?
Well, as you can see, I'm kind of in my office. Back there, on one side or the other, my father-in-law.
At my house, I would turn off all the appliances.
Okay.
Getting some feedback.
Just like
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys use the program Freedom, which
That's
sure someone's on who doesn't have their
internet on your computer, but that when you're writing long pieces is really important to you. Weird.
What's that?
Yeah, it's really great. But yeah, I do think having that discipline and definitely doing a job.
People don't have their
has to do also with.
Yeah.
Well, I
That's a good.
asked that if you're participating, if you just hit your mute button, and I'm also trying to mute people as I go here.
Okay.
Anyway, so I was saying, this is my office. I share it with my father-in-law and my husband. Fortunately, my son goes to school, and so I'm left alone in here. Yes, the television is right over there, and it's easy to go over there and watch The View or whatever. I try not to, but sometimes, you know what? I can be writing and watching because you never know what you're watching on TV. and it may spawn into just another story idea that you can pitch to somebody. And honestly, when we talk about taxes, that is something I've brought to the attention of my accountant, that, hey, when I was watching The View or Wendy Williams, suddenly I got a story idea. And so we'll talk about that in taxes.
Table, yeah, I like that.
But I try to, there's two things. I do work in this office. Sometimes I work in my kitchen. I don't know why. I get creative anywhere where I feel creative. I try to discipline myself. It was interesting. And here's something, I never took the offer on this, but after I went freelance and I let all my contacts know, including all the lawyers and prosecutors and whatever, there were like 5 lawyers who called me right away and said, hey, if you need office space, you know, I have an office that we have an office here in the firm we don't even use. You can have it for free. And I was like, do you have Wi-Fi? And they're like, oh yeah, you can have everything. I was like, okay, what's in it for you guys? It's like, nothing. I mean, 5 lawyers, different parts of Dallas. And I thought, wow. I go, no, you know, you don't want payback for something? They're like, no. I mean, we like you. And I was like, we want to help you out. I was like, wow, what a great idea. So that's something for you freelancers out there. If you know people, nonprofits, lawyers, ask them if they have a closet. I mean, if you can't work from home because you think you're going to be watching The View like I do, you know, definitely call them. Some of them will do it for free because, you know what, they trust you, they like you, it probably looks good, you know, and one of the things that you want to make it clear is that you're not in their advertisement, you know, that you're in the closet or something like that. There's no strings attached. But I thought that was interesting. I mean, that these people are willing to give you space, and if you have that challenge that you can't concentrate at home because the refrigerator's here and the TV's there, take it up. Ask them. Why not? But yeah, I have no problem working from home or anything like that. When I concentrate on something, I concentrate on it. I kind of give myself make-believe deadlines in my head, even though on some freelance jobs, they're not due for weeks, which is not something that TV people are accustomed to, because we got to get it done in hours. So, hope that helps.
I know that with if you choose to work from home, you can write that off on your taxes. That counts as like a home office, or you can write off a percentage as long as you have a space, a dedicated space to your work. You can write that off on your taxes. Now, I don't know about the lawyers that Rebecca dealt with, but maybe they were able to write that off too because they were donating that space to you. They may have. That's not necessarily something that you can do if you work primarily out of Starbucks. You won't be able to write it off then if you work primarily from Starbucks or the library. But if you work from out of your home, you can write a percentage off on your taxes, and it's important that you probably talk to an accountant who can help you do that. They can determine whether 85% of your home is dedicated or 55% of your home is dedicated to your as dedicated office space. So, Carrie, as a freelance copy editor, did you mostly work out of your house, or did you work out of somebody's office?
I didn't. Well, so while I was in grad school, the freelance gig I got at BNA, that was in the office. That required me to be in the office. So that was about 4 hours every 4 or so hours every week for the spring semester 2011, and then at various times in the summer, depending on when I had time. But before that, some of the other and also at CQ, the freelance gig I did there was also in the office. While I was with DemandStudios.com, that was strictly remote work, so that would be at home or a coffee shop or wherever I ended up. I find that I guess it's just a personality thing, but it's far easier for me to. I'm far more productive when I'm actually in an office working with other people. That when I'm at home, the TV gets turned on, I fall asleep, I waste time. It's depending on what kind of setup you have at home, or depending on how disciplined you are with television or other distractions, it can work for you at home. But I always preferred to work in an office or at a library or a coffee shop or something like that.
Right.
Or
right. So now we're talking about office space and maybe not everybody is as lucky to get it donated. You have to. Some people are now going to work at these boutique offices where there are cubicles or offices that they can use during the day, but they have to pay like a monthly rent for this space. So we're kind of getting into expenses. But before we jump into expenses, I want to talk about how you negotiate your rates. You got to negotiate your pay when you go into these situations. And I like to know first off, do most of you just accept do the publications give you their rate and you accept that, or do you even try to negotiate from there? What's best these days?
I think.
Go
Oh, go
ahead.
ahead.
I'm sorry.
I'll just say a quick note, which is I do think a lot of momentum has been building around, the sort of writers should be paid and interns should be paid type movements, and I think those are really, really positive, and that, it's been really encouraging to see freelancers taking, responsibility for themselves and also demanding their rights as workers in this industry. So I just really applaud folks that have been involved in that, and I think one of the good results of that have been all of these websites where people post prevailing rates for different publications. I don't know if you guys have seen those, but there's a bunch of like Tumblrs and other sites where folks are saying, if you're getting this rate at Salon, that's proper, blah, 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 different listing for different word counts.
Jamie, what's the name of that website again? Templar?
Now that you ask me, I can't remember, but pretty easily Googleable. There were a couple of them floating around that were sort of crowdsourced lists of rates for different publications, and this is print. So I guess number one, just to be familiar with that and to talk to friends and folks in your network who have written for different publications is really important to make sure you know what, going in, what you should be negotiating. I do think most of the places that are larger have standard rates that you can't mess with too much depending on printing. So one tactic is to try to, up your word count. Like you may believe that your story really demands X versus Y number of words, and that'll be more pay. But occasionally, I do think there is room to negotiate. I've definitely negotiated up in certain situations where I knew that outlet did have a fee. So I wouldn't shy away from that, but I think going in knowing as much as you can about what they usually do pay is really important.
I have a question. Is her audio coming in and out, or is it just my earpieces?
I think our audio is coming in and out.
Sorry.
I just want to let you know because I wasn't sure. No one said anything.
Yeah. Go ahead, Rebecca.
For me, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. For me, it was all new. In the first year, I would see that people would. Okay. Someone can mute their.
Okay. Can you all mute your mics? Because I'm getting feedback on my end. We want to be able to hear what Rebecca.
Someone's typing or something. For me, in the beginning, there were people that come out and say immediately 300 words, $200, or $1 a word, and I thought, okay, that was like the first maybe 2008, 2009, and then I'd say by 2010 I got bolder, and I first gave them my resume just to see, because I thought they need to see and trust that they're not going to be sued. Someone needs to mute their mic, please. But I really don't do that much negotiating. I mean, I wish I could tell you, yeah, go in there and they say a price and I go, no, $100 more, whatever. No, people have been pretty fair with me. I also look at the background of the site, if it's pretty new, the investors. I see if it's for-profit, non-profit. That's what I look. If I see, does someone have a vacuum cleaner?
Can you mute your mics, please? So
Anyway,
panelists. Thank you.
So I kind of do my research on the people that are offering me a freelance job. I mean, someone like, I've done freelance work for AARP. They got a lot of money. They have a lot of members. And I must say they pay well. But I also know that I've done stuff for startups. I've been paid as little as $100 for an article. But sometimes, I don't mind doing that because my name is out there if I want it in the Latino community with Latino publications, they got to see your name out there. I know it's a balance act. I know who's going to pay me more, and I know who is not. I know who's a startup who probably is trying to make it their first few years, and I know who's established, like AARP or different newspapers. So I look at that. Do I go in there with huge negotiation, like, hey, this is what you're going to pay me or else? No, because there's too many freelancers out there. But on the other hand, I never make them think, well, I'm not desperate. So I think when they feel the vibe that you're desperate, heck, they'll probably offer you $10 for an article, and people probably do it. I also didn't let them don't get lost in your ego. And I don't know how many people have been bloggers for Huffington Post, but when I knew Ariana Huffington made $1 gazillion from AOL, I thought, you know what, she can pay bloggers. And when I saw that the majority of the people in Latino Voices in Huffington Post were not being paid a cent, but were paid in what I call by ego, I thought, nah, we deserve something. And while, I mean, no disrespect to Ariana Huffington, but she's lining her pockets with money while all these bloggers are doing it for free. And I mean, I know it's a reputable public online site, but I think it's just still sad that in many cases, in the majority of the cases, she's not paying her people. And I think that's wrong. And so established places like that, I don't write for Huffington Post. I don't believe that giving away my work to someone, especially like Ariana Huffington, who's made $1 gazillion and can't pay. No, I don't think you deserve it. So be careful. Don't get caught up in your ego and seeing your name in lights. I think that sometimes you have to protect yourself because there's always someone that's going to say yes. I guarantee it. So
one of our participants just chat. They just sent a message. The name of the publication that you can the name of the publication to find out what freelancers are paid or how much publications pay is called scratchmag.net. So scratchmag.net.
Thank you.
They have a section that says he says who pays. So that's where you can find that information. Carrie, do you work for free?
Ideally, no. I mean, I do jobs for friends for free if they ask me to read something. I don't like to take money from my friends for editing or helping write something. That I have no problem with that. But I have bills to pay, and I prefer not to work for free if I can help it. I've not been in the situation where I've had to negotiate for a freelance rate. I've had to negotiate for a salary for full-time positions, but not for freelance. Every freelance position I've gotten so far has been the rates were set, and I just had to accept them, and they were fair, so I had no issue with that. I've never I've been in a couple of situations where I did kind of an odd freelance job here and there where I had to set my own rate, and I just use common sense and some guidance, from outside to kind of get an idea of how much to charge. I got a job for I think it was a 4-page document for like the foreword to a book that was being published, and they asked me to edit that, and even though it was 4 pages, it was quite intensive work. I charged $100, which was $25 per page, which I thought for that kind of publication was fair. That's the only time I can recall having to actually negotiate anything. Otherwise, the rates were set. So that was for me.
Here's what I found in my freelance career. If you don't ask, you don't get.
That's right.
So I have negotiated freelance rates. I have worked for publications, large publications, that have a set rate that they pay everybody, and I say, listen, what I'm bringing to you is X, Y, and Z. I'm actually reporting. This is not simply my opinion. I'm reporting. I've talked to 3 sources. I'm getting you. I know the background. I'm familiar with this territory. You pay $200 for this story. give me $150 more and you'll get more. And I've gotten it. So I know that men tend to do that a little bit more than women. And women have to be able to find their voice and ask for what they want. I just had someone they wanted me to I had to go somewhere, and they wanted me to fly out there and X, Y, and Z. Well, I had to negotiate how much my per diem was, and what in terms of my meals for that. So yeah, everything was negotiable at that point. Even though you're buying my plane ticket, you got to pay for the shuttle, you got to pay for car rental, all of that. So make sure you understand again that this is a business, and that if I got to come out of pocket, I got to get it back. I got to be reimbursed in some kind of way, or you got to pay up front. Can you please put your computers on mute? Thank you. So yeah, that's an important thing. There's actually a book. I can't remember the name of the book, but it's written for women, and it talks to women about how you negotiate what you want. How do you get what you want through negotiation? I wish I could remember the name of that book. Jamila Bay actually pointed it out to me because she's helped me along this journey a little bit, and she was in the previous session. But yeah, she's another one who actually knows to go into situations and how to negotiate for what she wants and what she wants her pay to be.
Can I say something real quick?
Sure.
One of the things also is, full disclosure, when I was transitioning from television to online, I probably wrote about at least 20 stories for free for one online site. But that was only because, it was a two-way street. They were getting something free, and I was getting the so-called, I don't know what you call them online, I guess.
Exposure.
The clips on print, what are they online? I don't know. But I was building my online resume because I needed them, because all I had was broadcast and video. I didn't have any clips or anything like that. So it was, in my mind, I thought, okay, they get this for free. I break online, and then I can use that to get other jobs. And in the end, it worked out well.
That's fair. So let's talk about exposure. Let's talk about exposure and what you get in exchange for your exposure. How do you Rebecca, when you went into that situation in which you were writing for free to build up your clip file, did you retain the rights for those clips, or did the person you were writing for have exclusive rights?
I've never even really talked about that. I just figure look, first of all, they can keep it. I'm not going to take that story and put it, and these are just examples. Let's say I sell it to the Dallas Morning News. Well, I'm not going to pick up that story and then sell it to the Times. If I'm going to, I may write on the topic, but it's going to be rewritten. I would never, I kind of use that TV philosophy. If you see it on one TV channel, you're not going to see it across the street. So I don't negotiate. Once you have my word that it's yours, it's yours. That's how I look at it. No one's ever made me sign anything. I've never made them sign anything. Maybe it's naive of me, but it's never backfired. It's never been something that's hurt me. I don't know. I just, the less red tape I give somebody and the less they give me, the more freedom I have. And that's the key to freelance, being free.
Being free.
So I don't get caught up in all that.
I guess I wonder, Tammy, I know you didn't say that you wrote for free. I'm not sure if you did or not when you transitioned.
Yeah.
Did you write for free? And if you did, was there some kind of negotiation that happened in that process for you?
Sure. Yeah. And tell me if my audio gets strange again.
Okay.
But yeah, when I was transitioning, I did write for free. I think I gave myself certain guidelines because, as I was saying earlier, I do really believe that this is work and should be treated as work and should be paid. But I did write, in particular, I'm thinking about 2 publications, and one was a small ethnic media outlet that just had no money, and another was a sort of local community outlet, and it was the same situation. And one thing I did to cover myself on some of that work was I would look for foundation money when I was reporting on certain topics, and if I could get a grant to pay for that story and give me a little on top, then I could take it somewhere that I believed in without thinking too much about whether they could pay me directly or not. So I think if you think about your sort of balance sheet, that way, that's sort of okay. And outside of the very preliminary stage of freelancing, I would really discourage people, from writing for free. I think the word exposure can be very dangerous because I'm thinking particularly like some of the larger outlets like the New York Times, obviously everyone's really excited to write for them or to take photos for them, but they end up paying rates that aren't so great. And, I think you do need to think about at some point, how are you going to balance that out and make a living for yourself? And also, your rates, if you think about if you're in a full-time job, you would never take a lower salary at the next job than the previous job. And I think thinking about freelancing that way is helpful. With respect to the rights question that Rebecca was addressing, I think that's more of an issue for photographers and multimedia folks because they will want to port that content elsewhere, and their contracts, they should pay more attention to that. I think for writers, because when you're presenting yourself in terms of clips, you can just print it out or send a link. It's not as big of an issue about reprinting. But again, I think for the photographers and video folks, that is actually a really big issue.
So,
but can I mention something real quick?
Sure.
I shoot video also when I do freelance for online, and I shoot photos. And I've never, again, made them sign anything. One, when I shoot photos, I'm shooting the photos that pertain to that story. It's going to help the storytelling. So I doubt I'm going to use that photo elsewhere unless it's some beautiful sunrise in California and I'm talking about a new day here and about the environment there. And video-wise, too. I mean, if they say, look, this is what I want you to cover, this is the video I want you, it's the story they wanted. So I doubt if I'm going to offer up that video to CNN. But again, unless it's like something that's exclusive, like I was there when a bomb went off or I survived it, okay, that's different. I probably would want to have something so it's mine, it's copyrighted to me. But I haven't gone to that level yet.
I guess I was thinking in particular of folks who just do photography or just do video, and when they're assembling portfolios, they need to retain the rights to republication of those objects. Anyway, the contracts are important to look at for sure.
They really are important to look at, and I think I did this more earlier than I do now. I did negotiate rights. If you were only paying me a small amount of money, then I would grant you exclusive rights for a limited amount of time, and then those rights will revert back to me, so that I could take that reporting that you paid me for, I could take that reporting and I could repurpose that reporting for another publication.
So I have a question because, I don't do all that. So are you saying that what you do is you pretty much give them a certain amount of time, and then if you want to sell that same story to someone else, it's not the same story, but I want to repurpose the reporting. That publication paid me for the reporting. What does that mean? What does that mean, repurpose? Are you saying take quotes?
I could use that reporting. Can someone please? Can you please mute your mics?
Thank you.
I would take that reporting out and I would write another story. It would be a different story, but that reporting was paid for by another publication, even though they didn't pay me as much as I wanted.
What I'm asking is, what actually are you going to reuse from that story where you need to repurpose? I mean, why wouldn't you make it just fresh?
It might be a totally different angle. It might be a totally different angle, or it might be, I don't know. It might, it's just I'm rewriting it, or maybe it's for another market. It's not for the same. It's not for.
Why not just make a fresh story?
It is a different story. It's a different story, but I'm using some of my same reporting that somebody else paid for. But that's why you negotiate up front that you have this exclusive rights goes to this publication, but after 6 months or whatever, the rights revert back to me. I hold the rights at that point, and then I can sell that story to somebody else or repurpose that reporting for someone else. Again, for me it was more I had to pay my bills, and so this was another way that I could pay my bills by retaining some of the rights to my work.
I will say this, because I don't repurpose stories, but I did write a piece for mommyverse.com, and they wanted to talk about Latinos and this multi-generation living conditions. You know, you have the grandfather, you live the kids, a bunch of generations live under one roof. And what happened is another magazine saw that story, and they gave me a call. It was Food and Nutrition magazine, and the editor also wanted a story similar, but she just said, I don't want it. Just give me a fresh story. And I was like, okay, no problem. And so that's another thing that happens. I mean, people will see your story, and then they'll want the same story, but they want a fresh story, but they want the same story, which is kind of, right. It was easy. I mean, I didn't repurpose anything. I kind of looked up I looked up the latest studies, and, they wanted to concentrate on Hispanics and the latest numbers and that kind of thing, but you will see yourself doing that. That suddenly right. You will write one topic and another online or magazine or newspaper wants the same story, but they're like going, no, we want fresh stuff, but we want the same topic. So
I don't know that, and I'll move on to another topic, but I don't know that freelancers understand that if they sell a story, even if they write it for free for a publication, once that publication publishes it, they can argue that they own the rights to that story.
Yeah, I've never had that problem.
Yeah, they can argue. The publication can argue that, and say that somebody else wanted to publish their story. They wouldn't be able to do that because they no longer own it. But I want to move on to, since we're talking about money, let's talk about taxes. And right now I'm having a coughing attack, so I'm gonna let Tammy talk about this a little bit.
Get some water.
Thank you.
Sure. I think you guys, Carrie and Rebecca, you guys might have given this a bit more thought than I have, but I mostly do my own taxes actually, and I've just learned the deductions. So I, sort of religiously save receipts and keep track of everything. The home office thing is a piece of that, but also just, of course, reporting expenses and then equipment, computer, camera, recorder, all of that stuff. One should keep track of that in some sort of organized format. The independent contractor piece is, pretty tricky. I mean, obviously freelancers are generally considered independent contractors, meaning that you're taxed at a higher rate for that. When you do have a job that is longer term and looks more like regular employment, I think you should be careful to make sure that you're not classified as an independent contractor, and that you are, in fact, an employee in that circumstance. So I think that distinction is something for folks to look out for. And I'll stop there.
Okay. So, Carrie, do you have any advice in terms of taxes? I know that as a freelancer, you have to pay a self-employment tax, and you also have to pay an income tax.
Right.
Is there any way around either one of those?
I'm not the expert on tax evasion, but what I would say is I haven't done my own taxes in a while. But what I do remember is that when you're freelancing and when you get checks in the mail rather than a direct deposit with a deduction every month, you have to pay out of your pocket when tax time comes if you owe anything. So that's something you want to keep in mind when tax time rolls around. Make sure you have some money saved up that you can pay the IRS. Don't just spend all your money. You can probably figure out what tax bracket you're in and how much you owe. But make sure that you have that saved up if all your income is from that means, if it's all freelance income. But otherwise, I can't really advise on deductions and so forth because I haven't done that in
Rebecca, Rebecca, how do you do it? I know that some freelancers each month they set aside their an estimated amount of taxes, estimated tax. Do you do that each month, or how do you go about it?
I do it I don't get into all that. I'm a journalist first. I don't have time to do all that. I have an accountant. My husband and I pay him probably about $250 a year. He does my taxes and his taxes, and it's the best thing ever. Basically, I have a drawer, and so I have a file that says freelance pay. I don't have my, I'm not a corporation or whatever. I just file my taxes as Rebecca Aguilar, and here's the freelance work. That's how he wants it. He said, until I'm making like 6 figures, don't worry about it. What I do is I just keep a notebook of every freelance job, when they pay me. I have on the side of my car, when I get in the car, I immediately write down the mileage if I'm going to go meet somebody, every lunch, every mileage to a job and back. He wants all that because that's part of I'm my own employee. I'm paying for my own gas, that kind of thing. I don't make it very complicated. If I have a receipt from a lunch where I know that I was negotiating a story or an interview or whatever, I write on top of that receipt, lunch, story on teen pregnancy, and then I just put it in a drawer. And then what I do is add them all up as gas, whatever, at the end of the year and just hand it to him to make it easier for him. I don't get all, I don't set aside money to income, that kind of thing. If I hire people to do freelance work. Like if I'm hired to do a video for someone, I'll hire somebody, and that's my job to pay the cameraman. And so I'll write them out a check, and then I let my accountant know, hey, I paid, so-and-so and so-and-so, and so I do give them, what are they, those W-2s or W-9s or whatever, and they have to sign them over. Right. Yeah, and I give those to my accountant, so this way I'm not taxed for their money. My accountant keeps it very simple. He pretty much said, look, unless you're hitting 6 figures, which I'm not, just keep it simple. Keep it simple. But he also said, be careful, because one of the things, and this was interesting for my accountant, because apparently people in the blog world, brand bloggers, and this was something new, I thought was a story that, they're writing off everything. If they take a trip to Disney World, they're writing it off as like, oh yeah, I wrote about Disney, or I wrote about the princess, whatever. He's like, this is the red flags they're looking for. Things where, what? You went to Tahiti for what? Well, I thought I was going to pitch a story, and I was going to, no. He says, unless it's a real thing, don't start writing off, dinners here and cruises there. No, because that's the kind of stuff the IRS people are looking for. Those red flags where it's like, seriously, you were going to do a freelance piece while you were laying on the beach in Tahiti? No. Keep it real. Be honest. And that's the things my accountant looks at. He also said, because I said, well, I just got a new Apple computer, I have a new printer, I have, if you looked over here to my left, I have a reflector that reflects the lights that's on me right now, and this was like $50. And he's like, yeah, you can write all of that off. Sure, write it all off. And in fact, I told him, I wrote off, I always write off my cable. I always do. I mean, I'm a broadcaster first. But even now as a freelancer, it's true. I have seen pieces, discussions, seriously, on The View, on Wendy Williams, on The Talk, and I'm like, dang, that's a great local story, and I'll write it down. And, I mean, come on, if I didn't have cable, I wouldn't be able to watch them. So one of the things, I've also talked to IRS agents, IRS investigators who do audits, and they said, look, you have to, like one time I literally wrote off a television, and the IRS agent says to me, all right, tell me, how would you explain it to me? And I told him, well, sometimes we need the split screen. I need to watch CNN. I need to do this because I do cover hurricanes. I'm the one that's sent to Oklahoma. Blah, blah, blah. He's like, okay, fine. I mean, that's a legitimate reason. You're telling me something. But if you buy a new TV just because you want to sit in front of it and, watch HBO, and then you're going to try to write it off, no. We're going to nail your ass. And I thought, okay. So, remember to work among the parameters that are real. Because the IRS auditors, they know the red flags. Sure, if you go to England and suddenly you're writing it off as a freelance job, they're going to look into that. And so, I just look at it as if you're honest, you're going to be able to explain yourself if they audit you. And freelancers are audited.
Right, they are. Just to answer my own question, there is no way around paying the income tax and the self-employment tax. You just can't do it. The IRS is going to take it. It's smart to hire an accountant. It's very smart. And it's because you are paying an accountant, it's a business expense, so that's written off too. So,
exactly.
Just like Rebecca said,
Tracy, the thing is with accountants, and even like I said, I think mine charged me $235 this year. Look, we're journalists. We're not accountants. I don't know how many journalists out there are trying to do their own taxes. No, and no disrespect to anybody doing the taxes on the panel today, but they know things that suddenly, like my accountant was saying, hey, are you writing this off? I'm like, no, I didn't know I could write that off. He's like, of course, you're a freelancer. I didn't know that. These guys have new laws, new guidelines, new everything, new things that they'll tell you as a freelancer, hey, you can write this off now as of 2014. You don't unless you're a tax investigator, unless you cover IRS. So they're worth the money. Tracy's right. You can write them off. And also, when you're going to do, like when I had to hire 2 cameramen for a job that I had to do for a network, I said, what do I do? I mean, I want the network to pay me, and then I want to pay these guys off. And he's like, well, do this, this, and this. And it was free advice. I mean, he was I dialed him up right there. So I strongly recommend find an accountant, someone who, is reasonable, and tell him you're a freelancer, and maybe he'll give you a freelance rate.
Right. Now, we have one important topic that I got to get to before the end, and I apologize, it's springtime now, so I'm getting allergies. The one thing we have to talk about before we log off is collections. And I will say this first and then open it up to you guys. People who don't pay, it happens. People don't pay. If they don't pay, that's called a loss. And you can write that off if the person doesn't pay. It's called a loss. And you can write that on your taxes, but you want to get paid. So I want to talk about how much time you spend as part of your business in collecting your money, how you go about collecting your money, and what happens when you can't collect your money. So I'll start off with Carrie first.
Get some water, girl.
I know, thank you. Carrie, can you talk about if you've ever had situations where you had to go collect and how you handled it?
I've been fortunate in that by and large, I've worked for big companies that were good about paying on time and had the money to pay every time I was to be paid. So I was very fortunate in that respect. It can be terrifying waiting by the mailbox for a check to arrive so that you can pay the rent. That I've been there, done that. It's no fun, but if somebody doesn't pay, well, maybe the lawyer on the panel might be able to advise on that a little better than I can. But I would say, do try to set up your expenses in such a way that you can work with your creditors to set up your expenses in a way that you can match up your bill payments to when you're anticipating payments. And if somebody doesn't pay, well, I might have to defer to somebody else on the panel because I haven't actually been in that situation as yet. I hope I don't. I hope I'm not anytime soon.
You want me to tell me about my pay? My pay, I immediately, they always ask me, do you want me, there have been some people, do you want me to pay you up front or do you want me to pay you once it's published? And I would say, wait till I'm published. I want you to be happy with it. I put a lot of trust in people, but I think pretty much most editors will hear about your reputation. So they probably, in my case, do not want to pay me because I would put it on Twitter. Don't write for so-and-so because he just ripped me off. I have no problem. I'm going to out you. You rip me off, you don't pay me, I'm going to out you so every reporter out there knows it. Everybody, I'm a VP of online for NHA. I'll let them know. I'm a VP with SPJ member at Fort Worth. I'll let them know because I don't want anybody else to be screwed. So I think I've never been cheated out of money. I've never not been paid. I think, yeah, I've been fortunate. And fortunately, I don't know who's going to see this hangout, but yeah, be forewarned. You don't pay me, I'm going to let the world know. And I will be loud and clear. I just think that's so wrong when people do that. And I hope that other journalists who are ripped off, that that's why we have Twitter. That's why we have Facebook. Let the people know. Because what? Do you think people are going to think, oh, that Rebecca, she's lying? Of course not. Because we have each other's back, and we should have as freelancers all the time, every time. So, but I do build them. I do build them, and they pay me. I mean, the bad thing that I do, I'm a procrastinator though. Like I have 2 freelance jobs right now that, they've already been published 2 months ago, and I have yet to build them. fortunately, I have a husband like, hey, when are you going to bill them? I was like, I know, I should. So that's my problem. I'm a procrastinator.
Tammy, quickly, what have you had a situation where you had a client that didn't pay, and how did you go about getting your money, or did you not get your money?
Yeah, fortunately, I'm in the same situation as the other panelists where there hasn't ever been a loss situation, but there definitely has been delay. And I think there was a good article on the Columbia Journalism Review a few years ago that was like the 6 steps of being a freelancer, and they were just stages of doing your job from pitching, and the last one being collecting. And when you're, doing a lot of print stories, for instance, you might have 10 or 12 stories, that you're juggling at once at different stages. And I think having a list where you make sure to get the money at the end of the day is really important. But I would agree with Rebecca that I think because of the crowd sharing around this kind of stuff, people's reputations can sink pretty quickly if they're not responsible to their writers. So yeah, thankfully I haven't, but I've definitely done some amount of email harassment of editors to make sure that the money comes through.
I think that for the most part, editors do want to pay you for your work. There are some bad actors out there, and with those bad actors, just like there's a website for that tells you about freelance rates, there are websites that tell you that from freelancers that tells other freelancers who not to work for.
Exactly. Yeah.
There are websites out there like that.
Okay.
I would love to know the websites.
Oh, I'll try to find out. I used to go to them all the time when I first started to know who not to mess with and who I could deal with and everything. I don't use them as much anymore because I'm kind of write for just 1 or 2 publications. But when an editors forget, okay? They have a lot of stuff on their plate. They sometimes forget. So you have to email them and say, hey, did you get my invoice? I haven't received a check yet. Did you get my invoice? And then they get, hopefully they get back to you. And if they say the check's in the mail, do you know when I can expect it? Just real quick stuff. You don't have to have an attitude. Be nice, polite. If more time elapses and there's still no check that came in the mail, you send them a 7-day notice. If they don't follow through with that 7-day notice, you might want to pick up the phone, call their boss. I have called somebody's boss before, because you don't want the editor to get in trouble with their boss. So I've had to do that before. I was able to get satisfaction that way. Bottom line, if you don't get your money, there are avenues. There are legal avenues you can pursue. You can go to civil court and get your money. I've never had to do that before. Never want to do that. But you can't. Freelancers can and have done that. I know if you live in certain states like New York, there are actually unions that will represent you in terms of getting the money that you're owed. If you don't live in a unionized state, then it's really on you to go to court and pursue that on your own. And again, you're paying court costs and everything. That can be calculated as losses, because this is it's a business. So
but Tracy,
yes,
can I say something real quick? I mean,
sure.
Look, we can do things. You guys can get things for free. Remember, you guys were full-time reporters at one time. You did stories with lawyers. There's lawyers up there that have so much respect for you. The 5 lawyers that offered me space right away when I became freelance, believe me, if someone tried to rip me off, I'd go to one of those lawyers. Do me a favor, send them a letter. Tell them we're going to sue them if they don't pay me. That's all you do. I mean, you help each other out. You don't get up on billing and, oh my gosh, you have court costs. You know what? Look.
I was just saying that this is an avenue that you can.
Right. I'm saying as a freelancer, find a lawyer. Aside from finding a good tax attorney, find a lawyer that you can say, hey, you know what, man, I mean, if somebody tries to rip me off, can you send them a letter and say, are you going to pay up or do you want legal action? Believe me, nobody wants legal action. No. They're going to pay you. And so there's always lawyers out there that respect you as a journalist, that they're going to do a favor for you. They're not going to try to use you or anything like that. Oh yeah, maybe you may have to speak in front of the bar association on how to work with the media, but that's fine. That's okay. But have a lawyer friend. Today, I mean, and real quick, because I know our time is running out.
It is.
I'm going to tell you 5, key people you need. You need a good tax attorney. Do your homework. Cut a rate with him. Usually, heck, he can probably even be a source on a story on tax returns and when to file. Have one. have an attorney. Attorneys are good people, man, and have an attorney that knows, that's not afraid to write a letter on your behalf, and it's not going to bill you. Because believe me, there's a lot of giving people out there. That's important. Someone asked me on Twitter real quick, and I want to address this. They said, hey, how do you just get your name out there? Look, if you're a freelancer or thinking about it, start a blog right away. I need to hear your voice. I need to know your passion. Is it immigration? Is it Latino issues? Is it African American issues? Is it cancer? Whatever. Write a blog and write at least 2 blogs. I have a blog called RebeccaAguilar.wordpress.com. I don't like to spend money. So it's RebeccaAguilar.wordpress.com. You see it, you'll see how I write it. It kind of looks like a website, to be honest with you. Have a blog. Do any speaking engagement, guys. Any speaking engagements. I've been at speaking engagements where recently someone just called me and said, hey, someone canceled. Can you make it at noon? It's for Latino kids, and it's sponsored by Latino Magazine. And I could hear their desperation. I was like, I told my husband, hey, I got to go. Make your own lunch. And so I went.
Sorry, guys, I need to log off, but thank you very much.
Thank you, Tammy. Now, Rebecca, you need to stay on because our next session, actually, how to get, I think it's, the name of it is How You Get Started as a Freelancer. And this is exactly, getting started as a freelancer, and this is exactly what they're going to be talking about. So this is the perfect segue. I'm going to turn it over to Denise Clay, who's going to be leading that discussion, how to get started as a freelancer, and she's going to be talking about exactly what Rebecca is talking about, starting a blog, getting your name out there, building a brand, getting that exposure, because that is all of that is just as important, if not more, than having your ducks in a row in terms of the business of freelancing. So yeah, we're definitely going to cover that, and I hope that you guys stick around for when Denise gets started, including Rebecca. I want to thank Tammy Kim, who was a freelancer before joining Al Jazeera, Carrie Williams, who was a freelancer before getting a full-time job with CQ Roll Call, and Rebecca Aguilera, who is a jack of all trades, and
I'm proud of it.
Journalism online, and Vice President of Online for the National Association of Hispanic Journalists. Thank you guys so much. I know this was a packed hangout today, and I know people have plenty of questions. I see the chat over here, but we'll have to probably do a part 2 to go with this next time. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you. You're welcome.
Guys.
Bye.
It's just me and you, Tracy. And I'm getting ready to check out.
Tracy? Hello? Hello?